Hey everyone, it's Cinder here, and welcome back to another Genshin Impact video. Now in this video, I want to just go over the different elements, and mostly the elemental reactions and elemental resonance. As you can see from, fighting like Superconduct, you may not know exactly what they mean, but you'll see things like Superconduct, Melt, Overload, Vaporize, Electrocharge, stuff like that. Crystallize, Swirl a lot, especially if you don't know what Swirl does. And this video is just going to go over all of that. What all these elemental reactions do, the type of damage it does, the kind of effect, so that you can, better plan your party and better plan for certain enemies that you're going to fight. And first, I'm just going to go ahead and start off by showing clips of each reaction and explanations of what those reactions will do. So for this one, I wanted to just go over Superconduct. As you can see, when you have electro or ice react with each other, it'll cause a superconduct effect. Now, the important thing to notice about superconduct is the actual effect itself is going to deal cryo AoE damage, and then it also reduces the target's physical defense. So even if they're immune to the ice, just causing that superconduct will still reduce their defense for your physical attacks. Alright, so for the next one, this is the overload effect. It's when fire and electro meet each other. So for overload, it's similar to superconduct, but it'll cause pyro or fire AoE damage, and it's also good at breaking geoshields. So whether you're starting it with electric or starting with fire, whenever they combine together, the actual overload effect is fire damage, and you can kind of see the extra because the colors will denote the actual damage. So, the orange is fire, and then purple is electric. So if I do that, the overload is fire damage. It showed 1509 fire damage. So that's something you definitely want to keep in mind with those superconducting overloads, because it's going to be a specific damage. You don't want to overload a group of like fire enemies, or at least it's just not going to do that much damage. Okay, so now we're going to go over the melt effect. That's when ice and fire combine. So you can actually start this in any way. You can start it with fire and then go to ice, or you can just, start with ice and then go to fire. So now what melt will do is it'll trigger from either one, and it deals increased damage. So if you trigger with fire onto ice, it'll cause melt, and it'll do 100% increased damage. However, if you go the other way and start with fire and then trigger it with ice, it'll still cause melt, but it'll only be 50% increased damage. So, throwing ice at fire, less damage. Throwing fire at ice, more damage. Same effect. Alright, now we're going to go over the Vaporize Effect, which is fire and water. It's very similar to melt in that it'll do extra damage no matter whether you lead with fire and then follow up with water, or lead with water and follow up with fire. It does, the extra damage, but it'll also go away when you use it. So if there's water on the enemy and then you shoot it with fire, it'll cause 50% increased damage, but then the effect, will go away. Likewise, if you put fire on the enemy and then you go with water afterwards, it'll do 100% increased damage, but then the effect will go away. So just like melt, and melt also goes away too, I believe. So depending on which one you do, it'll do a different amount of damage. Now for electric and water, you got Electrocharge, and either one will do the same effect, and it just will cause basically a dot of electric damage. So as long as the effect is going on, they'll just continually take electric damage, basically is what it is. So it doesn't matter in this situation which one you do. It's not a burst of damage, it's a dot. And I'll go ahead and show some more once I get up to some enemies. But yeah, this is one of the I wouldn't say it is the strongest one, but it is sort of, unless you're fighting an electric enemy, it's a pretty good one to have, because it doesn't matter which one causes the reaction like melt does or vaporize. So yeah, just constant electric damage over the entire duration. Alright, so now for this one we got the freeze effect, or frozen, and it's when water meets ice, and it's really nice because it just immobilizes them. Now it doesn't do any extra damage by itself, but as you can see, when you freeze somebody, you can also break them or shatter them. And that's done by doing like geo damage, or if you're using a great sword, or if you do the jumping attacks. I think they're called plunge attacks. So I really like this one, and having a water and ice hero together is very helpful because being able to freeze people means that they can't really attack you. And if you're able to constantly do that, then that's really nice. But you have to also be careful that you don't get putting the ice or water effects on you when you're fighting the opposite element. Okay, so for this one, I want to talk about Crystallize and Swirl. So first with Swirl, it's when the wind or animal element interacts or reacts with any other element. Well, that is fire, water, ice, and lightning. It'll literally swirl whatever the first element it comes in contact with and spread that to other and generate more reaction. Now, the shield that you get whenever you use Geo on an enemy, it'll say crystallize and you'll see these stones on the ground. You go and pick up the stones and you'll get an elemental shield that will absorb damage. And it absorbs damage even better for the specific element that it absorbs. So if you have a fire shield and you get hit by a fire attack, it'll be more effective against that. And you can't like combine Geo with Animo. It's only for those other four elements. Now for the last elemental reaction, I want to go over one that may not be known as much. It's called Burning, and it's when you do pyro or fire damage on Denro. Now Denro is basically plants. Like this enemy right here, one of the mages, it puts these brambles up. This is a Denro enemy. You've also might have seen those slimes that are like kind of hard to attack. They like try and hide from you. They'll have that little green kind of like heart type icon. That means it's Denro. And when you put fire on it, it basically just it's damage over time. It's just ongoing fire damage. Now we don't have any heroes that have Denro, but when we do, that'll be a reaction we can set up ourselves. Okay, so now as you've seen all the elemental reactions and know how the elemental reactions work, let me go a little bit more detail on just the elements in general and how important your team setup is with those elements and elemental reactions. So, first of all, you have, electric, fire, animo, ice. I know I'm not saying all the right words, but water, hydro, um, earth, which is geo, and then so on. So some elemental reactions, like you saw with the burning, not burning, the melt. Fire and ice will make melt, but when you use ice to create the melt effect on top of fire, you'll only get a 50% damage increase. But if you use fire to do it on ice, then you get 100% damage increase. So same thing when you do vaporize with water and fire. When you use water on fire, it's a 100% damage increase, and then when you use fire on water, it's only a 50% damage increase. So like if you're using a fire hero for instance, and you want to fight like the water boss, well yes you can cause the vaporize effect, but it's only going to be like a 50% um, increase. It's not you're not going to be doing as much damage. Whereas if you use like ice instead to cause the freeze effect, or if you use electric to do electrocharge on water, that's going to be much better than fire. Likewise, if you're fighting a fire boss, then yeah, water for the vaporize effect is actually strong. So you got to keep that in mind. It's mostly um, the melt and high vaporize are the ones that will cause that opposite effect. And it makes sense. If you're putting ice onto fire, obviously it's not going to be that effective. And if you're using fire on water, then it's not going to be that effective. And then going back to the crystallize and swirl. Swirl is nice. Just it's not good against elemental enemies like those hypostasis that are, obviously immune. Because if you use, if you're using um, Animo on like an electro hypostasis with no element on it, all you're going to be doing is swirling around that electric element. Swirl literally just spreads whatever element it comes in contact with. So that's not going to do anything because it's immune to lightning. Now, if you put like fire on it, for instance, and then swirl that around, then yeah, that would be strong. And then crystallize again just gives you defense. It'll interact with any element and then cause the crystal to come on the ground that gives you that defense. And that by itself does not give an attack increase, just gives you a shield. And depending on the element that it comes in contact with, you'll get a color of that shield and it'll be more effective. So let's say you came in contact with Electro, you would get an Electro shield, it would have that purple color, and it'll absorb damage, but it'll be even more effective against other Electro attacks. But that leads right into the elemental resonance that I'm going to explain. So normally, I'm just going to actually start with rock or geo. Normally, using a crystallize isn't really a DPS increase. It just gives you a shield. However, if you have two geo people in your party, then you'll get the enduring rock effect, and that causes it gives you increased resistance to interruption. But what's most important here is when you're protected by a shield, it'll increase damage, attack damage by 15%. So like you go and crystallize, you get a shield on you, boom, you have 15% damage increase. So, it's actually, pretty decent. It's not like the 25% attack, because this is attack damage, not like attack stat. So when it comes to straight attack, two fires are going to be more important. So let's just go ahead and start from the top now. If you have one of each element, like I have right now, then you get elemental resistance plus 15%. So no matter what your party makeup is, you'll get some sort of bonus. Now, if you have two fire party members, then you're only going to be affected by cryo 40% and less time, and then it'll increase your attack by 25%. This is pretty big, especially for, well, most characters. So, having that fire, double fire is actually really good. And then you have Soothing Water. With two water characters in your party, you'll get affected by Pyro for 40% less time, and it'll increase the incoming healing by 30%. So if you need extra healing, then two water heroes is nice, especially with the free barber you can currently get. Two wind or anemo heroes will give you decreased stamina consumption by 15%, increased movement speed by 10%, and it'll shorten skill cooldowns by 5%. So 5% isn't that much, but there are some characters that I would definitely like shorten cooldowns, like Beto and Chi-Chi. So this could, help potentially in that. And then two lightning heroes, which is what I have almost all the time, high voltage, affected by hydro for 40% less time, and it'll cause the superconduct overloaded and electrocharged, which is basically all of the electric elemental reactions. We'll have a 100% chance to generate an electric or electro elemental particle, and again, that's how you get those. How you use your ultimate, your elemental burst. You got to get the elemental particles, and this is only a 5-second cooldown, so you can't just keep spamming it, but every 5 seconds you cause one of those electric reactions, you'll generate a particle. So that's really great for people like Keishong or, you know, Faishal, so you can get those ultimates up really quickly, especially for Keishong, because she can use her little, teleport to cause those reactions all the time, and her ultimate can come up so much. It's very good. And then the last one, because I already went over the rock, is Shattering Ice. So you're affected by Electro 40% less time. Increased crit rate against enemies that are frozen or affected by Cryo by 15%. So basically, it increased 15% crit rate as long as you're able to put ice on the target. So, like, I personally would really love Electro and Fire. With me maining Beto, I would love the Electric and Fire, double combination, 2 electric, 2 fire, because I'd get the extra 25% attack, and I would be able to, get those electric particles quicker so that I can actually use my, ultimate. But there are currently no fire or electric healers, as far as I know, unless I'm missing something. So it's not ideal to do that because, I want to have a healer in the party. Now, if you're just out in the open world, you're probably okay, but, when you go into Abyss, then you're gonna have a hard time if you don't have a healer. Um, Depending on your build, especially with Keichong, most people are gonna go with a crit build. So like if you have electric main hero, high voltage and shattering ice is a good combination as long as you're able to consistently use that ice because you're gonna get a 15% crit increase right there. So that's huge. Like let's say you're only at like 30%, well now you're at 45%. So and of course, you'll be able to get your bonus up quicker. Or if you're using like a main fire or ice hero, then ice and fire is also good. You got to be a little bit careful with that though, because melt. If you're using ice onto the fire, it's not going to do that much damage. But your fire against ice will be strong. So if you're just using like ice support people and your main people are attacking with fire, then yeah, that'll be a good one because you can set the ice up and then now they're going to be taking more. Your crit chance will be higher and you'll be doing more damage. Um, and I actually really do like Enduring Rock. If you like Earth heroes like Noel or Ningguang, which are the ones that I have, or even the main hero, the main character hero, I definitely suggest if you're using either of those to definitely use two of them. Um, yeah, because you're going to get that extra increase. So like Enduring Rock and like two fire heroes, or Enduring Rock and Shattering Ice, for instance. It's nice, but you definitely want to keep those elements in mind when you're you know attacking enemies, when you're fighting bosses, when you're trying to choose your team, because yeah, it's really important. And of course, the last one, Dinro, is not currently. There are no characters that are currently in the game, but it's basically plant. Um, Showed you in the burning clip. If you use fire on Dinro, it'll cause a burning effect. Don't know if there's going to be any other reactions. There aren't any currently that I can see that goes with Dinro besides the burning. But you know, Dinro might be strong against certain shields that are like the water shield, for instance. But Dinro's not in the game as a playable character, just enemies. But yeah, that's all I needed to talk about for the elements, the elemental resonance, how the elements react to each other, so that maybe now you can, have a clear understanding of what these elemental reactions are, so you can, you know, be more efficient and stronger picking the right character for the right situation. So if you liked the video, please give a like and subscribe for future videos, and as always, thanks for watching.